Welcome to Stars Podcast, your growth mindset mecca. We are all about self-leadership principles here at Stars Podcast. Our guests come from all over the world with very unique stories of how they hacked their way into success. As you'll quickly find out, nothing happens overnight. And as always, enjoy the journey. Hey guys, this is Ron Jordan coming at you at Rocinante Studios in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Welcome back to all you longtime listeners, and welcome to the family to all of you who are new. Today we have a guest who is the host of Crazy About Crypto Show, where he highlights the crypto NFT origin stories of his guests. His guests range from artists like Beeple, collectors like AJ Vaynerchuk, NFT art curators like Christie's Noah Davis, and regular Joes like you and me. Please help me in welcoming Crazy Carl onto the show. Welcome, my friend. So glad to finally have you on.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I've always been really humbled that you've been one of the earliest listeners, like committed listeners to my podcast. So when you asked me to come on, it was a no-brainer. I had to come on and say hello to all of the people that listen to your show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And the show that he's talking about is Crazy About Crypto Show. And anybody who's been listening to this podcast knows me, and they understand my desire to seek out people that are teachers in something that I'm interested in. And whenever I came across your show, you had AJ Vaynerchuk on, and I was like, what is going on over here? And from there on, man, you just had hitter after hitter on that show. And I've definitely taken more than I've given. So to you, I applaud for doing that. It's hard to do.
Well, I think the whole journey of being into like podcasting or any sort of entertainment is you have to be passionate and have conviction about something. And so it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I came from education background too. I was a teacher for 12 years. So getting out of that recently, largely because of crypto, I just wanted to start another endeavor and I think this just kind of fell in line with what I wanted to do, and I've been really humbled too by some of the guests that have been, without even really knowing much about the show, been able to get them to come on and just share their journey. It's just so cool to hear people's journey into the crypto space because it is so early and people don't really understand. Um, this really is happening in our lifetime. This is a technology that'll be around for hundreds of years, and it's starting right now in our generation. And it just reminds you kind of, if you think of like the Wild West or, when like land discovery and gold discovery in California or, early times like that, like that's where we're at right now, except in the blockchain world. And so the more people we can onboard, the more people that we can help learn about this technology, the better. So, and I understand the tech, but I'm not a coder by any means. So it just made sense for me to find a way to fit in and build in my own way. And this is what it's come to, and I've really enjoyed it.
And you can tell that you really enjoy it as well, because because whenever you're talking with them, you're asking very thoughtful questions, and sometimes it's on a macro level to get a basic understanding, but at the same time, like, to have that type of questioning, you have to have a really good understanding of the subject, and the only way to get there is through sort of a passion for it. So backing up though, with the educator background that you have, and you mentioned onboarding, and that's like, it's like one of my biggest passions is to be able to onboard new people into this space in a safe way. And getting industry experts like you have been, like, what have you found to be a key to success, or at least like a common theme as more and more people on board?
Yeah, so I mean, from the guests that I've had on my show, the common narrative I feel like is that everyone has that moment where they have a lot of conviction. There's some geniuses in this space, and I talk with a lot of people about it, but when you look at the like Forbes richest people in like 5 years, it's going to just be consumed by crypto people. You know, the people that are in the space are just mind blowing, the intelligence that they have. And that's why it's so humbling, because I can't believe I'm even in the same space a lot of the times with some of them. But I think the first thing is like when you have someone that intelligent that can go to Google and get a job easily. And we, you know, Jimmy was on the show and he worked for Google for a while. And so when you have those types of people, they have to have a lot of conviction to like jump ship and do something else. And I think that's a common thread. And even when you get into like collectors or people new in the space, there's just a lot of there's a lot of emotion right now. I see that as probably a common thread. A lot of people are excited. I think that we're still going to be in for a little run for people that are new to the space, because there's kind of a realization in any sort of market, but when you're in such a volatile market as crypto, there's going to be people losing a lot of money too. And so trying to get people to get conviction, I think, is like the key to educating and understanding, because when you're just FOMOing in, or if you're just really excited about something, or you made a lot of money on this first NFT you bought, and now you're going to double down and try and buy something else because you're so excited about it. But excitement is like a very emotional thing, and conviction is very like very less subjective. You know, it's
Hmm.
because you understand the underlying tech, or you understand what this means for the future of how we operate. And so that's the key, is like getting people to understand, if you're buying Dogecoin, that's fine, but understand why you're buying Dogecoin. If you only in it because it's hyped up, then you know you could lose a lot of money really fast too. And so it's just understanding the nature of what you're getting into, so that way if you lose something, I talk about it on my show, but whenever I've lost money, still remember back in November, I lost 4 Ethereum, as a lot of money now. You know, that's almost 10 grand. And I
Hmm.
lost in a matter of seconds to basically a scam, set up like a basically like a real token launch, but the person just took all the money and disappeared. And so that was a learning lesson for me, because I didn't have a lot of conviction about that. It was more because I saw people getting hyped up about it and I jumped in. And so the more you actually take time and don't just get into the next craze, and that's what scares me right now, is because you see a lot of people get really excited whenever there's a new launch of an NFT. And so it's just trying to the people that are guests understand it a lot better than I think some of my listeners do. And so that's what I really try to portray through the show, is like, you've got to understand why you're in this space, what you're doing, and kind of find that path as you're exploring the crypto world.
Yeah, that's one that I have trouble with myself, is the excitement, because everything is so very exciting all the time because of how new the space is and the amount of innovation that's happening at just lightning speed. Um,
Yeah.
boy, it really is just incredible. And but I want to go back to what you said there. 5 years from now, we're going to be looking at the Forbes magazine, and the richest people in there are going to be from the crypto space. Like that's a really, I would say, bold statement, but being in this space now, it's like it's not really that crazy to think about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, once you really start getting involved and seeing kind of the power that's being harnessed. I mean, Gary Vee is a perfect example. I know a lot of V friends watch your show. Like, if you don't think Gary Vee's net worth is going to 10 times from where it's at now, just because of the space, I mean, you'd be crazy. Now, a lot of people may not see the path there, but I guarantee, you know, some of these big purchases that he's been making in terms of crypto punks and these other things, that he's getting in so early compared to institutions. And so he's using these funds that he's had over the last 10 to 15 years, and now he's going to maximize his gains because of that. And the smartest people in the room are doing that. And so I think that's what I mean when I say the richest people in the world. It's not like I will be in the Forbes magazine, but the people that have already built success over the last 20 years, like Gary Vee. I mean, he's for sure going to be a billionaire in probably the next 5 or 10 years, because of the crypto space, and because he understands how to utilize the technology.
Yeah, being able to understand the technology and then have, like you said, the conviction to go out there and do something different with it and build off your legacy that you've already built is, I mean, it just puts you so much further ahead than the next guy who's just getting in, um,
Hmm.
as like a larger business just trying to get into it. But so what was your introduction to the crypto space? Because you come from teaching, so I'm curious, like, where did that come from?
Yeah, sure. So back around when I got out of college, right around when the financial crisis of 2008, 2009 happened. And so one thing that after a few years of working and being an educator, I actually also had a business background. I also went to school for finance. So I started looking at valuations of companies in like 2011, 2012. As I started getting into the market, I started investing, I mean, I still remember, I think Google was like $300, which now sounds so cheap. But
Mm,
at the time when I was looking at all these valuations, I was like, everything seems so high still, even though we were just in a financial crisis. It's not like the economy is a lot stronger than it used to be. And so it just really didn't make sense to me. And as I looked more into it and I like studied more like monetary policy and it really I started waking up to the fact that the whole financial system that we're operating in, it's kind of like a ticking time bomb, and eventually people are going to really want hard assets or hard money. And so my initial jump was out of, initial investment like stocks and bonds and traditional investments like that, and I started buying a lot more like I bought a lot of gold and silver back in the day. And so crypto and gold and silver, basically believers really intersect quite a bit, right? It's a lot more about having hard money, not the belief that um, the way that things are operating right now, you're starting to see. I mean, I saw it back in 2011. Now it's a lot more evident. You see inflation. You see the government essentially paying constituents. This is something that we've never seen before. And so the fact that I still am getting deposits into my account, every month just for having a baby, it's just insane. It doesn't make any sense. And so yeah, I mean, I started as a believer in just finding some harder money. I knew that eventually my mindset in 2012 and today has changed a lot more. Back then, I really thought like stock markets would just tank eventually. But now I've realized that when you have so much uh, stimulus being pumped into an economy, it has to move somewhere. And the people that are the smartest in the space know that the way to continue wealth generation is by putting it into assets. And so the stock market, in my belief at this point, is probably going to have a much more blow off top still. I think it probably has a ways to go up. But in the meantime, you're also going to see other assets like crypto and people moving from the more traditional assets and finding these newer, stronger assets to move into. And so my first initial jump into crypto from gold and silver was in 2018, 2000, end of 2017, right after the big boom. I don't know if you remember when Bitcoin got to like 20,000 at the end of 2017. And so, a big reason why I believed in gold and silver over crypto at that point was I just didn't see the mainstream adoption. And after that happened, after that run up, I was like, well, it's going to happen. It was just kind of like that light bulb. It was like, the hard money isn't going to be probably gold or silver anymore. It makes more sense that it would be digital anyways. And now looking back, it's like, wow, if I would have been been putting money since 2013, all that money I put in gold and silver into Bitcoin or Ethereum. I was really investing in gold and silver before Ethereum even launched. So I've kind of kept an eye on all of it, but I just never had that, like I said, that conviction until that point. And then I was kind of all in. And and like I said, there's times where my investment in crypto would go down 70 or 80% in those 2 years. Because as you know, we went from like 20,000 at the top of 2018, and within a year fell down to like 4,000 again. So it was definitely a wild ride. And so that's what this new NFT space reminds me of a lot. And the for a long time, I didn't have conviction about certain coins, and I would take losses, or I try to trade and jump from coin to coin and play these trading games. And sometimes it would work. A lot of times I lost money. But at the end of the day, I just kept researching every night. I would read about new projects, new coins, and then I ended up investing a huge amount of money into a coin that I really believe in, which is called, at the time it was called the Flexa Network, and now it's called AMP token. It's now on Coinbase, and back in the day though, it wasn't a very well known token, but now they're still building amazing things, and I just left my money in there. I believed in it. I wasn't really worried about the ups and downs because I knew in the long run where it was going. And so I just kind of let it go. Let it sit there. And then in 2020, when NFTs were starting to really pop, I started researching more in that space. Also lost a lot of money first dabbling in the space, and learned a lot from that. And then started moving some more funds over into like the NFT space this last year. That ended up being a pretty good decision.
So whenever you talk about hard assets, I'm not absolutely familiar with what that means, because you were talking about hard money and the gold and silver and then now into crypto. I'm just not familiar with the terms. Maybe you could expand on that for me. Just
Yeah, the most basic form is just like with gold or silver, it's a finite supply, right? And with crypto or even with NFTs, it's a finite supply. You don't there's a limit, there's a cap, and it's also with the algorithms and the math with crypto, you know exactly how much is going to being put into circulation. And with gold and silver, there's only a limited supply in the ground, so we know that you can't just create gold out of thin air. That's the biggest difference between like current monetary policy and like a hard asset, is that it's not like someone can come in and just say, oh, there's $1 billion more dollars of gold now. Um,
that
and
makes
even
sense.
and so there are some games even being played in the market where there's like this paper silver and paper gold. That gets very dangerous when you trade like gold or silver. Uh, some of the trading even in the stock market, can some people say that it's not technically that the price of gold and silver is kind of being skewed because of paper trading. But in on a very plain surface, is something that is you can it's calculated. You know exactly what's happening. And it's a rare finite supply. Another aspect of hard money is that it can you can break it into pieces, which crypto and gold and silver you can do to make it a smaller unit. And so that's the big aspect of what hard money is.
Gotcha. That actually makes a lot of sense, and why we're able to. That was something that actually like really drew me to crypto in general, was like all the like the decimal points and how precise everything ended up being, and having the cap of how many there actually are, just because of the paper money. And you always hear, they just keep printing and printing and printing. But with this, it's like, okay, this is how many there are, and that's it. There's not going to be any more. And then it takes a certain amount of time to actually mine those coins and all of that. It was like very truth seeking, of for lack of better terms.
Yeah, and it actually, the entire premise of Bitcoin started, I mean, Satoshi really he had put out the white paper of Bitcoin right around the financial crisis. And that's when some of the early adopters really got into it, is because they understood the tech, and they understood, that there couldn't be any manipulating of this. And so really the biggest fear of Satoshi back in the early days is that someone would be able to kind of control too much of the supply. That's kind of the biggest risk early on, because the goal of any sort of crypto project is that it should be decentralized, because that is definitely like a one aspect, right? Like the government would control the majority of the monetary supply. They control everything when it comes in regards to that. So you don't want to have a crypto. You may see the government have a digital dollar here in the next couple years, just like China has a digital yuan now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good technology, right? If it's the whole purpose and the whole reason that crypto became mainstream is because it's like this decentralized currency. And so, yeah, it has like all of those things. It has where you can tell what's happening, but then also it's not like one person owns a majority stake. Even when these people, these billionaires are starting to come in the Bitcoin space now, buying billions of dollars of this stuff, it's a percent, like it's 1% or half a percent of the it's just like it's impossible to really get like all of the supply. And as more money comes in, there's also such a diversified group of people holding the crypto asset at this point that even if someone wanted to come in and try to sweep up a lot of supply, a lot of it's not even on exchanges. And so really the only thing that would happen is that the price would just go skyrocket because after a certain point, of buying so much of it, you're just going to drive the price to like an insane amount.
Right.
So
And
that's
I could,
why people say, like Bitcoin will go to $1 million. I mean, technically it sounds crazy, but it's not unrealistic because of that finite supply. And part of what you have to think about too is like, if Bitcoin's at $1 million, what's that say about the dollar? Maybe the dollar is also worth a lot less. Maybe a candy bar costs $5 at that point. So as you print more money and you create like these monetary systems that inflate purchasing power, that that makes it's really sad to see what's going to happen, because what you're going to see is the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer, and because the rich are the only ones that, or the upper middle class and rich are really the only ones that have assets. And so it's also just kind of the whole point of my podcast as well, and just educating people, is like we have to get more people into assets, even if that means just a small amount. It can go a long way if it sits there, and throughout the next 5 or 10 years, as all of this kind of unravels. In my opinion, I think we're going to see a lot of crazy stuff happen in the next 5 years, in this space, but also just in our economy. You already see supply chain disruption, stuff like that. This is all stuff, in 2012 or 13, when I became really fascinated with gold and silver. This is kind of the stuff that I predicted or I thought would happen. And so it's crazy seeing it happen now, because even back then, it's like, wow, the world's going to be, you're going to have the opportunity to make a ton of money. But then there's also, while that's happening, there's going to be a lot of people losing purchasing power, that, they're living in these apartments that cost $1,000 a month, and they're not able to barely afford the things that they're working for. And just there's just going to be a huge there's just going to be a huge gap between like wealth and poor. And so that's why it's so important to educate yourself about these types of things early on, before it gets out of control.
and then the other part of that too is you mentioned like a candy bar costing $5. If that same like grocery store, will say, starts accepting cryptocurrency, then that sort of evens the playing field back out again. So like the mass adoption could help that. Is that is
Yeah,
that
and
like the
so
goal?
yeah, that was kind of where it becomes, the goal is where you can use crypto in your day-to-day life, where it's easy, just like Venmoing someone money. You can pay, for your rent in crypto, things like this, because eventually the goal is, right, that this becomes a new type of currency. The problem in the early days, it was impossible to really find avenues to spend it. And so as we get kind of continue down this path of development and evolution, that's really the next phase. And that's it's funny that you mentioned that, because that is exactly what the AMP token is basically helping do. They have partnerships. That was really one of the problems, and what I was looking for when I was looking for a crypto to invest in, is a crypto that could help this go more mainstream, where you can go to a store and buy something with your Bitcoin. And because of AMP and the technology, AMP is actually what powers, if you've heard of the Gemini app, which is a place you can buy crypto. You can actually go into Gemini now, and you can spend your Bitcoin or Ethereum at, like, I want to say like 30 or 40 different big retailers, like Lowe's and like Bye Bye Baby, Bed Bath Beyond, and it's all just from the click of a QR code. And
Hmm.
so this is just the beginning. I mean, they've been working on this tech for years, but the guys that are just leading this one project are like geniuses. One of them was a former, literally a rocket scientist. It's kind of funny, but
It's
he's
always good to
just
have one of them on your roster.
right. Exactly. It's like how can you bet against a rocket scientist?
You can, but I mean, they're just gonna look at you a little bit funny.
Yeah, so that's where I think I do see that kind of it's I thought it would even be they would even have more updates, but they're the tricky thing is trying to maneuver it's two worlds intersecting, right? With the crypto world and the traditional finance world really butt heads, and you saw that early on with, you know, every major news site really just saying crypto was a way for people to do illegal activity 8 or 9 years ago to in 2017, 18, you started seeing it get a little more legitimate speaking space. But now, you know, the cards are kind of on the table at this point. I mean, it's just a matter of time and the tech and the real tough thing is trying to figure out how we can continue to advance it, but in a way that also there's regulation. There's, you know, governments don't want to lose power, but then they also have the speaking point about wanting to protect consumers. And so there's definitely crypto needs to kind of merge with that traditional world. And you know, AMP and other big companies that are really at the forefront of things are working to make sure they do things in the right way instead of, you know, doing things and then asking questions later and then getting in trouble, kind of like Ripple did with the lawsuit against them. So they're working a lot more methodically and realize the importance of working with the regulators, because once you get big enough, if you're not doing things the right way, you're about to get shut down or go to jail or something like that. So you still have to operate within kind of the system that we've been working within for hundreds of years. But at some point it is, I think, inevitable that you see, you know, they're kind of merged together, but then they kind of take their own different paths. In a way, I mean, this is thinking more a little farther out, you know, 30, 40 years down the road. I think you just start seeing the whole world operates in a different way once crypto becomes more mainstream, because it allows for more of a limitless marketplace. The whole Web 2.0 kind of knocked down borders, and you know, in America, you didn't know about all the other religions of the world because it wasn't taught to you, and now you can do a Google search and learn about any religion you want. You know, these are really important things that you know change the way that we operate and think in the world, and that's exactly what crypto is going to do, except with everything, is just make it easier to interact with people anywhere in the world. It's so funny looking at even just like the podcast listeners on my show. Like there's a that you can look at the data and just seeing like 20 to 30 different countries of people listening in within just the first month. I mean, that just blows your mind. Something that 10 years ago would have never been possible.
Yeah, the amount of reach that you have now and the information that you're giving out is, you know, their ability to engage in that seamlessly now because of the internet and because of Web 2.0. And then as you're talking about all of the coins and how they how the valuation, you know, skyrockets and then comes back down just as the markets do, I just running through my head these NFTs and how, you know, the limited supply of them, or the limitless supply rather now, and then how the prices are so high up. Like I'm trying to understand when that comes back down to the 4K, because it seems like we're at 20K right now. um
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's going to be a crazy world. The biggest problem right now that I foresee is that newer people to the space, they're looking for something that's going to do kind of what has happened in the last few months, which is like buying a gutter cat for like point 0.4 Ethereum, which is where I bought most of mine. And now, you know, the cheapest gutter cat is 7. And so I bought for a few $100s, and now it's like the cheapest one's 20,000. Well, anyone like trying to get into NFTs, a gutter cat's not really in there. Uh, arsenal of things that they can afford if they're just an average person working a 9 to 5 job trying to get into the space. So then what you see happening are people taking more risks. They're trying to find the next big thing, and there may be the next big thing out there, but with the whales that are in the space, they're really able to rocket ship those projects really fast. And so then what you see, even in this market, you see people losing money, even in the craze, because just as an example, the mutant ape, they just got released. They went up to like 7.5 Ethereum, and now the cheapest one is less than 6. So that's $4,000 loss in like 2 days if you would have bought right at the top. And so these fluctuations definitely happen. The Meebits is another good example. Right when they got launched, there was a lot of hype. You bought them for 2 Ethereum, and they were selling. They got up to like 4 or 5 was like the cheapest one for the first couple like 48 hours, and then for the next 2 months they just went down. For like months they just kept going down. And so if you would have bought in right there and held for a while and then just got depressed, a lot of people lost money with that. For every asset out there, if someone's making money, there's usually someone losing money, especially as a market fluctuates. And so that's where that conviction really comes in, right? Like if you're just buying something because you see other people talking about it, it's not a good idea in my opinion. And like in terms of financial advice, I don't give financial advice. It's like that's why I always preach on my show. It's all about the conviction. I'm not going to tell you to go buy anything because I want you to go learn for yourself. I need you, because without that, even my neighbor just texted me yesterday telling me he has $5,000. Tell me what to buy. I'm like, no, that's not how this should work.
Right.
You've
Right.
got to understand, because then, it's just, if you don't understand what you're getting into, it makes it a lot harder when you lose the money
Because you
than
don't
if you
understand why
do.
you lost it.
Yeah, like for you, you're a perfect example. You bought VFriends, you love Gary V, you're excited about the conference, you know what's going to happen
Hmm.
with the token, you believe in his long-term outlook. And so as the VFriends market even kind of dipped over the last few months, but that didn't ever change your conviction about holding on to it, because you never planned to sell it really to begin with. But if you were going to sell it, it was going to be a way, way, way more than what you bought them for. And
Right.
so that's like one good example of you having conviction in an NFT that you purchase, because of the project and the person developing it. And that's exactly what people should be doing in the space. They should get in, that learn about the people that are developing it, learn about the communities that are involved before making really any sort of decision. Because you're right, like NFTs are going to have that time, and honestly, it's probably getting closer. You already see a lot of projects slipping. They get launched, they end up in top volume for a few days, really get hyped up, and then they just start to fall. And really, the only ones that are going to be around are the ones that really have the strongest communities in terms of the NFT space, with avatar projects and stuff like that. Um, and so you really have to believe in what you're buying and kind of learn about what to look for in the NFT space as you start to dabble in it. But without a doubt, I really encourage people to get in the space, because it's not going away. It's just not. And
Right.
if you find the right things, you're gonna you're gonna be surprised at how fast. My brother got a gutter cat gang when they were about $4,000 just a few weeks ago, and now his investment's already like multiplied by 4 or 5. So it's
Right.
just one
Yeah.
example,
Yeah. The cats have been they've been seeing a couple good days here.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because of the developers behind it, right? They're doing everything right, and they're engaging with the community in the right way, and the community is really strong. The people that have been in the Gutter Cat gang, since a lot of people have been in there since the first week. Really, there was about 1,100 people that got into the Gutter Cat gang, and I think I'd say at least 1,000 out of the 1,600 or so that are in it now were in there the first week. So when you have a strong community like that, and there's only 3,000 gutter cats, so when you have 33% of your cats already in strong hands, that's a big deal. You've got to look at. That's why all these 10,000 supply tokens, when they pump really hard at the beginning, I'm like, just wait. I always talk about it, but I say wait until the first drawback. That's when you're going to really see what the community is made out of. And a lot of times when that drawback happens, you see people undercutting each other, trying to leave because they never had conviction to begin with. And so, and that's also what makes the apes go from like 10 Ethereum to 50 in a matter of a few weeks, is because the people that already bought in have a lot of conviction. They're not looking to sell anymore. And so once you get that strong base of community, then it's the sky's the limit. But you really, as a community, and VFriends is there. I predict, VFriends is, if you have a VFriends, hold on to it. I just purchased a VFriends. I actually was, it's kind of embarrassing. I was talking to AJ before the launch. I was kind of close with him. I actually talked to him as they were launching, telling him I was going to get one. And then I didn't, mainly because I thought I could buy it cheaper on the secondary market than where they launched for. And I was totally wrong. They went on secondary and I watched it go up like double in a week. I was like, okay, it's going to go down. It just like never went down. It just kept going up. And I was like, oh, damn, I missed out big time. And, but now I'm in the V fam now. I always planned on getting one. And I'm happy I'm finally in the V Friends community, because the community that they're building is so important and strong, especially when you look at the newer people to the space that got in because of VFriends. So they're able to really learn, and they had an NFT from the get-go that they already had conviction about. And so that was kind of a cool thing. The V family is definitely a stronger community that's trying to learn the space, and kind of has a good mentor in Gary V to help guide them.
Yeah, you ended up getting in at a good time too, because we're supposed to get, I don't know if this will air before the announcements come, but I know Labor Day is supposed to be a really big day for announcements in the V family. So
Oh,
um
I didn't know that. Giving
it's
me some news I didn't even realize. That's
oh,
exciting. Well,
okay. Yeah, so there's actually going to be some announcements coming out on Labor Day, or there right about Labor Day. I don't know if it's going to be a couple
okay.
days before or on Labor Day, but that's been a day that he said, like, if you're going to get into the V Friends, like, you got to do it before Labor Day.
Well, look at that. I'm so excited. I'm pumped. The reason I got into VFriends when I did is because, Ron, this, but some of your followers that maybe aren't tracking the market as much, there's been so many things that have just skyrocketed in the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Between the apes, the cats have really skyrocketed, the cool cats, a lot of these avatar projects that are kind of stronger projects are just skyrocketing. The World of Women is a cool project that's went up almost 300% in the last few weeks. But then you look at VFriends, it's like, what is going on? VFriends only gone up like 20-30%. So
I
that's when
know.
I knew, because the VFriends, I'll tell you right now, I didn't know about that announcement. I'm glad I bought before that. But I knew Gary, I have some predictions about what I think is going to come soon with Gary. But I knew that before he made any of those announcements, I had to get in, because as soon as that happens, you're going to see the floor double or triple really fast, just like these other projects. And so that's what made me get in, is because it seemed undervalued at this moment. And that goes back to that conviction. You do your research. I've been watching VFriends for the last 3 or 4 months, and I was really happy with the price that I bought, because a month or two ago, it was only about half of that, which is insane. You would think VFriends would be up even more, but I don't think Gary has shown some of the plan, like you said, some of the bigger things that are happening. And this is a prediction I'll make on your show. I don't think I've talked about, but I almost guarantee that some of those big CryptoPunk purchases he made, like the $1 million ones with the I think he bought an ape, or he
Mm-hmm.
bought a zombie. I don't remember which one, but a really rare CryptoPunk. I almost guarantee somehow that's going back into the VFriends community. I have a feeling it's going to be in a DAO, or he's going to do something to basically give some of those big purchases. I don't think he's just doing that for Gary V. I think he's doing that for the community. And so when that kind of announcement gets finally out there, you know, everyone knows he's made those purchases, but it hasn't really came out why he made them or if it's just for him. But my belief is he didn't make those purchases just to hold them. I could be wrong, but it just doesn't sound like something Gary Vee would do when if he seeded a DAO with some of those things for the community. If he's really all about community, which I believe he is, it just makes sense for the next steps of what's coming. So I'm pumped as announcements come in, because I think there's going to be some huge things people don't even understand the magnitude of, that could just skyrocket VFriends real fast.
And that's the thing too, is he is working with all of the big movers and shakers in the industry. It's just he's just been quiet. He's just been really
Yeah,
quiet, letting everybody
that's
do
a
their
good.
thing.
Yep.
And it's like, this is his thing. It's the way that he operates, and everybody who's close to him understands it. So we're just huddled down and we know it's coming. So, like, as you said, whenever you have that conviction in a project, that's whenever you can ride out the storm. And I talk about that all the time, just being able to keep a level head when you're trying to invest anything is, if you can just maintain your composure in that situation, you can think clearly, and then you can start to gather yourself and become into that conviction part of the process, you know. Um, which brings me to something else too, is, you know, we're talking about onboarding, and a, a lot of the times this is a single player game, but you and I share a, not something that everybody shares, is our spouses are into it as well.
Yeah, so that's been a long game for me. I've been in crypto a while, and it's very difficult. My wife, I talk about crypto a lot with her, and she is not a huge fan of it. But you know, at the same time, it's important to me to, if you have a spouse, one, if you're passionate about something, obviously it's important to help them understand what you're passionate about and why. But for me too, it's like getting her involved in the space a little bit more. Getting on like crypto Twitter is just part of like my, hopefully, a journey that I can create for her to understand the space better, because it's easy to hear the stuff, but when you're kind of entrenched and go in this community and see what's happening, you start to get it a little more. And so I already have seen her, you know, get a little more intrigued with the space since being on crypto Twitter, which I'm really excited about. And then the next phase, obviously, is, you know, this is a big deal, like the crypto world, because you're your own bank. And so it's not like if I were to die tomorrow, like I need my spouse, my wife, to understand this, how everything works, because I've got a tremendous amount of basically our net worth in this stuff. And so it's really important that if something happens to me, I think about it every day. It's my biggest concern, is like, I want my family taken care of. And if she doesn't understand how to access stuff, what a decentralized wallet is, how it works, where seed phrases are, how to transfer money from one thing to another, how to liquidate, like these are really important things that if I can't if I can't get my own wife to educate, like she's under the mindset, you know, where I'm young enough where it's like kind of something that's like, oh, we'll deal with that later. Like that's not a concern. But for me, it's something I think about all the time, because, you know, the random accidents can happen any day. And so it's really important to me to get your spouse, if you're really passionate about it, in the space. One, because you're passionate about it, too, but more importantly, because there's a lot of wealth that's going to be generated from these types of assets. And so you need your spouse to be able to understand all of the workings of it, because it's not like you can go to your insurance company or a bank and just be like, the transfer the money over, or, you know, now the account's in your name. You're your own bank, and you have your keys, and no one else has it. And that's one of the beauties of crypto. But then at the same time, that's where that learning curve comes in. It's a new world where you can't really trust anyone except, you know, the people closest to you. And so you have to make sure that they understand the technology, as well as you kind of get more involved in the space, because if something were to happen to you, they need the keys to be able to take over.
That's the most important part to me too, is her being able to, because otherwise all of this is for naught. All of this investing and learning and getting into this space to, I mean, obviously it's to further this industry, of course, like we're sort of the beta testers of all of this. And that's important to the whole process. However, like you want to make some money while you're doing it to take care of your family. And at some point, they need to understand how to access all of those funds and assets that you've amassed over the years. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that too, it's like my wife, if something were to happen to me, I would want her to be able, I need to build that conviction in her, right? Like because if you really understand what VFriends is doing,
True.
and if something happens to me and she liquidates all that and she has, a good stash of cash, but cash is going devaluing, like that's the opposite of what is really the best decision, even though it would be really good for the time, and they would be taken care of. Like the first step is making sure that she understands how to do it, and then the second step, which is what I'm really trying to build towards, and hopefully, I think the point is when people are able to start to even spend more time in this space and not have to work because of it, stuff like that, then you also have more time to get that conviction because you see what it's doing. But for her too is if I would want her to understand the power of what the gutter cat gang's doing, how to be able to see the progress, and have conviction too, because if I would be turning over in my grave if I died tomorrow and she just sold all the NFTs and liquidated and put it back into cash, because I know like she would never have to work again in a year from now, and that's something I talk to her about still, is like she's working part-time still, um, even though technically she hears about some of the investments that we have and it's just like mind-blowing, but the amount of compounding that's happening in the space right now, it reminds you of an entrepreneur. Mark Cuban lived on a mattress in his floor in a studio apartment, at the beginning of everything. So, you go through a little pain. We could not have to work and we could be buying. I'm very, like, I don't buy stuff, I don't really like, that's, maybe one of my weaknesses too, is because I should probably spoil my wife and my family even more. But it's something that's important, is like understanding what is happening in the space so that you actually can have a little conviction too, because I want my wife to be able to continue this path so she doesn't have to do the job that she doesn't really enjoy, so she can spend more time with family and not have to work. But the only way to do that is to continue compounding, compounding that wealth over and over. If I wouldn't have got into crypto in 2018, I would be a whole different story where I'm at today. And so that's part of the story. It can be a life-changing thing, but you got to understand it. So getting your spouse involved is so crucial. And I love to hear that you're getting your spouse involved too, to learn about it. And
Oh yeah,
because
she
it's going to
she can
change.
walk. She like run circles around me now. She
Oh, that's awesome. See,
yeah,
that's my goal. I need to get my wife to
she
that
is
point.
like she's running clubhouses and she's running discords and she's doing shows and teaching people. I'm like, where did you come from? This is coming from the same person who like looked at me right in the eyes and said, you bought how, or you spent how much for a bug? And it's a
Right.
Jeep. Like that's the same person, 3 months later. And I can't believe it. She just an introduction to this world. And it was like a fish to water. I couldn't believe it.
Well, it's also, that says a lot about you too, for encouraging and embracing and, talking her up, sending those affirmations. That's a big thing, to be able to get your spouse that involved, and even to a point where she understands it, like you said, like running laps around you. That's crazy. And I would love to see, like, that's the goal though, right? Like seeing her do that, it just makes you so confident that she's gonna, they always say we're gonna make it or whatever, but you
Mm-hmm.
need your spouse to be able to feel like that too, like we're all going to make it. If she's in that mindset, you guys are golden. So
Absolutely.
I got to continue working on crazy Carla. She's gonna get there though. But she's also uh her mindset much more is like, you're passionate about it, because I'm that crazy guy that talks about crypto 24/7 and she
Sure.
can't get me to shut up. So so for her, it's like you take care of that. Like I don't need to understand that because we're good. Which is good, is great. I'm glad like she doesn't have to understand, but I'd like for her to find the things in the crypto world that she's passionate about because there's as the space continues to grow, there's things for everyone, right? And that's kind of a cool thing. Now you see so many artists getting in the space. And as time goes, different careers are just going to keep finding ways to kind of entrench what they do also into the crypto world. So it's going to be cool to watch.
And I think that's going to be the coolest evolution that I'm going to see in the near future are some of the new jobs that get created out of it, and then being able to do those jobs, like you can just get the best person from across the globe. It's just not going to be in your region anymore, especially if it's in the crypto space. So that's like something that I'm really looking forward to for the next generation that's coming in, and just staying on top of it and just being exposed to the program or the projects that we're involved in. Is like there's so many people in them, but at the same time there's not very many people in them. But those that are very, they have that conviction about the space, and they're in it and they want to learn more. And that's sort of being the exponential growth that I've seen just in the last 3 months, is like unbelievable growth, from the projects to the people to the new wallets. I mean, you follow the numbers and it's like, holy crap. And then you walk out front and into the real world, and they still don't have no idea. So like that's
Hmm.
how early it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like, we went from 50,000 NFT holders to over 150,000 in the last like 3 months, which is just insane. It's like triple if you talk about like a company growth or,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is like a large growth stage thing that's happening, and it's a whole industry. It's not just a company.
And still it's just 150,000.
And still, right, there's billions of people on this world. We haven't even hit a million NFT holders. That's insane.
Yeah, that's to me. And just seeing what I see in the space, and all of the franticness and all of the, like, everybody's trying to move at 100 miles an hour, is like, whenever you really go up in the jet and you look down and you're like, I can't even see it.
Well, yeah, when you're talking to your neighbor and they're like, "I don't understand. You bought a JPEG? What?" Like, and wait, it went up that much? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the first step right now. Like this, my neighbor is a good example. I talked to him last night. He doesn't understand anything now. He just wants me to tell him what to do. But that's kind of where you see like people are like, "Wow, you like." There's success stories, right? So people are like, same with Apple. That's how does Apple become, go from 300 to thousands? Or Tesla is another good example. Tesla is a prime example because Tesla is very much like a cultural stock, right? Same with AMC and GameStop at this point. And so as soon as it becomes cultural, as soon as it becomes something that people hear about, Jimmy was talking on his show about how like the word NFT is going to be synonymous with like a GIF, like that. When that's a thing, when people are just using it in everyday talk, that's when, that's when we're not early anymore. but
Right.
but like you said, that's not a thing. We're still having to try to explain what this is. People may have heard of the term NFT, but they still don't really get it. And so we're kind of the first proof point of the NFT world, and it's kind of cool to be early in that sense. And as a VFriend, if I know you got a lot of VFriend listeners, it's really exciting because like getting in on VFriends back in May when it was like zero point 0.5 Ethereum was the cheapest one you could get, is just like it's going to be insane in a couple years looking back and be like, I cannot believe my $1,000, $2,000 investment. Like I can't believe it's worth this much now.
Well, what I'm
Um,
going to look back and say is, I can't believe those things sat on the floor for a week, 2 weeks.
right.
Some
Yeah,
of that,
that's true.
whenever you look back, and all of us were so new that you just really didn't know. And now whenever you reminisce, like we sit in these clubhouses and we have this thing, it's called like family reunion night, and we'll sit there and we'll talk about like the good old days already, and it was 3 months ago. But it's like, I can't even believe that we let those sit there like that, just knowing
Yeah,
what we know now. even
think
even if we didn't know if we didn't really know Gary and we just knew about the NFT space in general, and we saw things sitting at point 0.5, we would have been like, why is it, first off, like, why is it so high compared to all the other projects? Like, what's that about?
That
And
was the
right
problem I
there,
had.
yeah,
Yeah.
so much more expensive.
But and then also the Dutch auction style was interesting because it went down over the and a lot of things got to the lowest price before you could buy them. But like you said, like if that project launched today, you would have people buying immediately at like I think the non-rares tokens were like 5 ETH and they go down to point 0.5 over like I don't remember 24 48 hour time frame.
I think it
Uh
was, yeah, I think it was 24.
yeah, and so those things that were like those would have been scooped like immediately, now with so many more people in the space. But
Mhm.
Gary launched it still a little earlier. I mean, he launched VFriends right around when the Bored Apes launched. I mean, that just gives you an idea of
Yeah, we
of
were a
where
couple weeks
how
before him, or yeah, before the Bored Apes.
yeah, so that just gives you an idea too of kind of the trajectory and you see it like another thing that makes me real bullish on VFriends. If you go into the marketplace, there's the supply going up the chain is really there's not a lot, After a couple hundred sales of VFriends, your floor is way higher than it is
Right,
now just from a couple hundred sales. And so once right now you're only seeing 5 to 10 sales a day. Well, just wait. This is what I talk about with gutter cats too. But just wait until there's 100 sales every day, or even with you do hundreds of sales to pump that floor, and then even still with the floor of the apes being 40 to 50, once you kind of hit that, everyone knows about you, talking about you. They're still, even at those prices, are still selling like 50 apes a day. And so the volume is just insane as you kind of become this mainstream project. And I wouldn't call VFriends there yet because it's just people people that didn't get into it. There's a lot of NFT people like myself that kind of were into other crypto projects. Um, I think VFriends was that's one of the coolest things is like the people that were buying VFriends for the most part were Gary fans, not NFT fans.
hmm,
And so it kind of it just opened up a whole new world of like the of market space into the NFT world. And so they're going to benefit the most as the NFT world kind of continues. But there's a lot of big people like myself who I invest in a lot of NFTs and didn't invest in VFriends early on. And I think a hard part is knowing that you missed out. It's hard to be like, well, I'll just bite it and still buy it now. But once you have more people like what I did just yesterday, finally buying one, you're going to start seeing more and more people doing that as those announcements start rolling out, and
right.
that's when things get crazy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think is going to happen here in the next couple weeks. So I am really glad that you got in before that. I had thought you known that, or I would have told you. I feel like a bad friend right now. I should have definitely told you about that.
No, I didn't
Um,
know about the Labor Day announcement, but it makes me a lot happier that I got in. I'm not as active on the VFriends Discord. It is impressive going in their Discord. It's I was went in there after I bought it and it was trying to introduce myself, but they're so active in there that it's hard to even keep up with the feed sometimes because people are, talking or saying stuff and then before you know it, your comment is like 20
oh,
like lines
it
down.
gets deep. It gets deep
Yeah.
fast, and especially
And then
after
if
the
Gary V goes in there for a minute, then it
forget
gets
it.
really insane.
Forget it. You're not even getting your chance to talk. But yo, crazy Carl, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad that we were able to like finally chop it up. I really appreciate
Yeah.
your time. Is
It's
there
been a
any
lot of fun.
yeah, is there anything that other than going over and checking your show out at Crazy About Crypto show over on Twitter Spaces, which is if you guys aren't over there and setting your reminders, you're missing out. I'll tell you that right now. Like I get there as much as I possibly can. And then also you record them as well. So they're available on a podcast, but I'll let you go on with that. I'm kind of doing the plug for you. Sorry.
No, no, I appreciate that. It's always better, hearing. It's kind of funny because I'm also after getting out teaching, I do real estate. I did real estate part-time, but the number one way to get new business is through referrals, right? Your friends talking to someone they know. And so that's how you build organic growth, and that's what I want for this show. I want people to be passionate about it, and I love hearing you talk about it and want others to join because that's the goal. I want it to be something meaningful to the community. But yeah, I mean, you can go to it's CAC Minted is my Twitter handle. You can go and check it out. I think if you type crazy about crypto show, hopefully it pops up. I need to work on figuring out, make sure the algorithms work to make it easy to find. But also the crazyaboutcryptoshow.com is where you can also just learn a little bit more about my journey and then find the podcast there. Or you can go on to Apple or Spotify podcast and you can type in crazy about crypto show and you can find the show there too. And I think we've had 22 recorded shows now, and it's
Wow.
just insane. Just we do quite a few shows a week. It's crazy. It's crazy, just the amount of people that are coming into the space, and I'm so excited to keep growing. And I'll give you an alpha. I got a guest coming on my show in 2 weeks that I haven't really told many people about. And
Ooh,
I'd love to kind of give you a little inside information.
perfect.
So on September 15th on the Crazy About Crypto show, I got Beeple coming on, which
Get,
is Mike Wiekelman, who sold the $69
oh,
million
yeah.
Christie's, and kind of got this whole NFT space really going. And so I'm a collector of his and was able
Holy
to get in
crap. Well,
touch.
you just ended up getting one of his, didn't you?
Yes, back in his sale in his summer and spring sale, I got two of his pieces. That was kind of like my holy grail. I really wanted a Beeple, and I finally
Mm-hmm.
got I got two, so I can sell one because I know that one of them I'll never sell. But yeah, I actually was having trouble getting my physical, and I had kind of shit posted on Twitter about it, and all of a sudden he hit up my DMs and was like, "Hey,
Wow.
dude, what's going on? Like, try and make sure you get your stuff." And it's one of those things whenever a door opens, try to take the opportunity. So I used it to ask him if he'd come on the show and he agreed. So yeah, a couple weeks. I think
Congrats.
that this month is just going to be kind of a pop off. There's some other big guests that I won't talk about, but he's by far the biggest that's going to be on my show this month. And I'm just excited for the show to keep blowing up and to keep but as the guests keep rolling in, the bigger part is really the listeners, because without the people in the community that are listening and learning from these people, like it would be pointless. And so
Right.
I really appreciate you, and I appreciate all the people that tune in, because it's a true blessing to see people wanting to learn about others that have already been in the space. And I appreciate you letting me come on and kind of share my story, because on my show it's more about the guest and talking about stuff with them.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And this let's not be strangers with one another and let's keep it going. I appreciate your
all
time,
right,
Carl.
always, yeah. Come on, come next. Let me know if you ever want to chop it up again. I'll be happy to come on, and
Of course.
eventually you're going to be on my show too. I do a community spotlight where I bring up people in the community, and you're already on my list. I want you on the show. So now that I've come on this one, you got to come on my show one of these days.
All right. All right. Pull my leg. I'm in. All right, guys.
All
Thank
right,
you
man.
all so much for joining us. And as always, enjoy the journey. Take care, guys. Thank you so much for sticking here until the very, very end. If you wouldn't mind just leaving a comment or subscribing or liking the podcast or wherever you downloaded this, maybe it was from YouTube, I would love for that. You take an extra couple seconds to give us some more love. Even though you have listened here to the very, very end, we appreciate that so much. Could you also go over to thestarspodcast.com if you found any of this really interesting and you wanted to dive in a little bit further? Or go to our Discord, which is Rocinante Studios NFT. Enjoy the journey.